Welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at CCA's Polaris. So this is a familiar recipe. This is a one dynamic driver, 4 switches, metal faceplate, quite a familiar looking set that not so much CCA but KZ, the parent brand, has done quite a bit of. So not a whole lot to talk about on the shell. The box is pretty much the same. The cable is the same as well. But let's kind of jump right into it, and I will say this one is pretty much exactly what I would want in a $13 IEM. No surprises, no fatigue, adjustable bass levels, no crazy amount of bass, no crazy amount of treble, not too bright, not too muddy. This one just hits the balanced mark, pretty much dead on where I want it at $13. And it's not really all that much of a surprise. It's really a slight tweak to an already likable DFI style tuning. And that one looks a lot like this. So DFI are in the green, and you can kind of see where Polaris has a narrower bass adjustable range. So the usable range on Polaris is a little bit restricted compared to where it was on DFI. I would argue that DFI was probably too wide, and this bottom one wasn't all that usable for the amount of pin gain they use. It came out a little bit too bright, but I think Polaris, again, I think this slight tweak to the usable range, I think actually worked out quite well. And maybe it is just a hair above where DFI is in the bass, and that's a good possibility. And then right here in the upper mids and the lower treble, you can kind of see where they tweaked the recipe a little bit. DFI is just a little bit higher, a little bit earlier. Polaris kind of moved back and just under the Harman line. And I think when KZ tends to ride the Harman line and just be under it, I think that is their perfect level. That sounds about right. As soon as they go above it, things get a little too bright and a little bit out of balance. And this kind of bit is kind of a wash. I think the extension on Polaris is actually quite good, and there probably is something out here that has a response out in the upper treble. I think that is about how it sounds in your ear. So again, DFI was very likable. Polaris is just a refinement on that, and a little bit more relaxed and under the Harman line. I think that was the perfect move for people who don't want in your face shoutiness. And DFI wasn't all that shouty, but it's nice to have it set back just a little bit. So I probably like this one a little bit more than others, as it really sounds great on my desktop amp, and I can't really explain why it does. I think a lot of it has to do with a track like this. So Justin Hurwitz, Another Day of Sun. A few hundred times I played this one. And for those of you who sat through that movie with your partner or maybe your wife, yeah, that is La La Land. And so catchy tune, but it actually shows off a lot of the balance of what they got right on Polaris. So male and female vocals, not too thin at all, not too energetic. These are kind of natural, full-sounding male and female vocals. Bass line is right there, plenty of bass on this one. They increased the mid bass just a little bit, so it sounds a little bit more fun. And then you get the horns and the piano and the other instruments that just kind of pop in place. And the vocals over all those things actually done quite well on here. Again, I think they kind of got this level of bass kind of right, and they got the level of the lower treble and the pinna kind of right on this one as well. And at $13, I think they kind of nailed the balance on this one quite well. So, as I just said, the balance is right. Welcome back, the KZ tuner, who has been MIA on recent treble heavy sets, and the past few sets have had a lot, and it goes back to exactly what I was just talking about. KZ has a few sets that were way up here, floating above the Harman target line, and those tend to be too bright, too off balance. You end up with female vocals that aren't quite right, and they kind of drop the mid bass down. You end up with really scoop mids and male vocals that don't sound right. And again, on a $13 set, they somehow miraculously found the right balance where vocals sound quite right. And again, there is some guy at KZ who knows how to do this, and he apparently tuned this one. So versus the MT4 Pro, TRN's MT4 Pro, and I just talked about that one a couple days ago. So MT4 did a couple things not so good. So you can kind of see where Polaris has a sub bass range that kind of brackets where MT4 is, But then mid bass, exactly what I talked about on MT4. This was dipped down a little bit too low, and they brought this one up, not so much too high, but too early. So you end up with a little thinness from here, added with the thinness from here. It's too forward, too in your face, really messed with the stage. And then you see Polaris. You have a more usable range on the bass if you like a little more bass, a little bit more mid bass, so things actually have some body to them, and a more relaxed pinna area where the vocals aren't in your face and they stage correctly with the rest of the treble. Imaging, stage, balance. Polaris got a lot of things right that MT4 didn't quite get right. So, yeah, I would say, but I think they both going for the general same idea. I think they were both they took a likable tuning, but Polaris ends up being much more natural sounding, no leaned out mid bass and no overly forward vocals. But the sound, again, I was just saying, it's small tweaks to a familiar tuning that work in favor of Polaris and didn't work as well for MT4 Pro. The bass, again, this one is KZ returning to a more fun, full level of bass, Harmon plus that mid bass boost, just a full sounding lower half that makes pop music sound as you're expecting it to sound at this price point. If you are looking for a leaned out, no mid bass set, look elsewhere. This is really what $13 should sound like for people buying their first set. And I can appreciate that everyone tends to review sets based on their proximity to variations and variations lack of mid bass, but to be honest, at $13 it should have some mid bass. It shouldn't sound so leaned out. There should be no surprises. There shouldn't really be a gap there in the bass, and vocals should sound like they have some body attached to them. So yeah, that's kind of my view on what $13 sounds like. The mids, again, at this price point, they need to sound engaging and natural. With the mid bass on this set, there's a thicker natural, but again, for the price, I think this was the right move. If you want vocals to pop more, you can set the switches down. If you want it to be a little bit more fun, with a little bit more bass, move the switches up. But there's a reason why so many people like DFI's tuning, and this one is really no different. Same idea. It's not going to win any technical awards, and KZ has other sets for that. But as far as a no surprises, this sounds as I would expect and how I would give a person who has never heard IEMs before. This one is pretty much dead on for what that should sound like. On the treble, so when KZ tunes for balance and less peaks, you can actually hear the treble and it sounds more than $13. And this is where KZ's marketing gets a little skewed. They talk about the quality of dynamic drivers, and again, this one is another one where they snuck in a higher quality dynamic driver than what you're thinking at $13. But they tend to mess up the tuning and throw it off balance, and you can't hear the extension, or you can't hear enough extension. They tend to be all over the map on the tuning. So the marketing guy always says, this is a great dynamic driver. It has, a 0.15 magnetic gap, and it does all these things that other dynamic drivers do. But then they get the tuning off center, and you can't hear the benefits of their wonderful dynamic driver. So Polaris is one where they actually got the two in sync, and it is a nice dynamic driver, and you could actually hear pretty nice dynamic driver treble. So I think they got that one done pretty well. Stage, same thing. Good tuning, good stage. This one, images, stages, separates, all the things that you would want. Probably better than the price of $13, but again, hook it up to good gear, and it will be a little bit surprising. It's actually quite a nice set, and again, as I said, I probably like it more than everyone else, and I have an affinity for KZ sets that hit the right balance, where males and female vocals sound about right. So that is what Polaris did. So again, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you next time.